Do Something Different, a leadership podcast. I have had multiple clients passed over time and again for promotion. Today, we are going to reveal the hidden mistake that they made and you might be making that blocks you from the career success that you want. Then we're going to go on to 3 simple steps you can take to fix that problem. I'm Rusty Gaylord, and this is Do Something Different, a leadership podcast. And it is critical to be thinking about what you want in your career and how to get there. Because so many people get stuck and they don't realize that the reason they're getting stuck is a mistake they're making. Most people try to add things when they're stuck. They try to do more, as opposed to the answer might be doing less or fixing something that you're not doing right that is actually blocking you. So we're going to talk today about how to overcome this leadership mistake that so many people make that blocks them from the next step in their career. I'm going to start by giving you 2 specific case studies, examples of people that I've worked with, and I'm going to change their names and make it anonymous. But these are real specific individuals that I have worked with who were stuck. The first one is Brad, who had been in the same company for 6 years as an individual contributor. Now, Brad, when he joined this company, before that, he was a people manager. He used to manage people, and he liked that, and he wanted to get back to it. But for 6 years, he was stuck as an individual contributor, and he couldn't get to the next level. He couldn't get the opportunity. Now, Brad is a super smart dude. He is very hardworking. He is detail-oriented. He produces high quality work. And if I had to pick a word to describe Brad, I would call him a workhorse. He's one of these dependable, reliable, high-quality kind of people that when you need something done and done well and done right, you give it to Brad. Second example is Sarah. Sarah had been at the same company for many years, and she had been a manager for 10 years. She had been working to get promoted to director, but she was passed over year after year after year. Now, Sarah was very effective as a manager. She was a good business partner. She was innovative. She was collaborative. She was easy to work with. In fact, how I would describe her as a problem solver. When there was a problem that needed to be solved, you bring Sarah in because she can help people. She can bring them together. She can find innovative solutions and bring a solution to the table. Now, when I talk about these 2 people, Brad and Sarah, do you see the similarities in them? Clearly, one of the similarities is they're both expert at their current role, and they've built a reputation around being good in their current role. And that is getting to one of the biggest mistakes that people make in their career. And it's fundamentally this question: what is your personal brand? Most people don't think about it and they don't deliberately craft it. And so that's specifically the challenge that both Brad and Sarah faced, and I bet you might be facing too, which is if you are not aware of your personal brand, if you're not deliberate in crafting it, and your personal brand is tied to the work that you're doing now, it's not forward-looking. Those 3 problems are going to hold you back. Now, I'm somewhat using personal brand and reputation interchangeably because your reputation and your personal brand are simply a reflection of how people see you, which means it's tied to what do you do? How do you show up? What are the actions you take? How much do you speak? What do you spend your time on? What's important to you? All of those things factor into and create your reputation or personal brand. And all that means is it's how people see you at work. So in the example of Brad, people saw him as a workhorse. Is a workhorse a manager? No, they're not the same thing. But Brad really wasn't aware of that. He wasn't aware that he had built this reputation for himself. And at the same time, Sarah had the same kind of challenge. She was a problem solver. She was good at collaborating with people. She was innovative. But those were responsibilities and capabilities that are very much tied to her current role as a manager. They were not tied to the next level of being a director. And that's what Sarah was aiming for, but she wasn't making any progress because people saw her as a manager. So you have to ask yourself, how do people see you? Do they see you based on your current responsibilities and being an expert in your current responsibilities? Of course, you want that to be a component of your personal brand or reputation. But if that defines your entire personal brand, you are limiting yourself and you're not able to get to the next level. One of the pieces of career advice I got at Apple, which I 100% believe in, is if you want to get the next level job, you've got to be operating at that level. You've got to be doing the job before you get the title. And this is completely backwards from how most people think about it. Most people think you've got to have the title before you can do the stuff that someone in that title does. And once you do those things, then you are going to be that person. You're going to feel like it. So in other words, you've got to have the title of director before you can do the things that a director would do. And once you are doing those things, then you're like, oh, now I feel confident. Now I feel important. Now I feel like people listen to me. You start to be that person. You start to incorporate those feelings. The problem with this is it's 100% backwards. The real answer here, the real process forward is you've got to be that person first. You've got to be the person who's confident, who has ideas, who knows and trusts that people listen to them. You've got to be that person. And when you are that person, you're going to do the things that a person like that would do. You're going to speak up in meetings. You're going to operate at that next level. And when you start operating at that next level, that's when you have the title eventually. You get the title because you already are that person. You've got to be the person in the role before you get the responsibility, before you get the recognition, before you get the title, before you get that external recognition of who you are. You've got to be that person first. So now we're going to get to the 3 steps, the how to actually execute on that. And it's very simply encapsulated by this title, which is you need to build your personal brand. And once again, I don't mean personal brand from a manipulative kind of standpoint or a purely marketing standpoint. I mean, who are you? What is your reputation? What do you stand for? And how does that reflect in the way you operate day to day? So here come first the 3 steps. Step number 1, define what is your personal brand. Who are you? You've got to figure out, what does the person at the next level look like? As you remember earlier, so much of the personal brand or the reputation of both Brad and Sarah was tied to their current role. It was not forward-looking. And many of us say, well, I want to be authentic to who I am. And Brad is a detail-oriented person, and he loves producing high-quality work. And that's great. And he's actually very analytical, and he loved leaning into his analytical skills. All wonderful strengths. But if you're only playing to those strengths and you're overplaying to those strengths, you're missing what it takes to go to the next level. So the question is, do you want to be authentic to who you've been in the past, or do you want to be authentic to who you are becoming? You've got to look forward because you are capable of growth and development and evolution, and you want to look ahead and say, where am I going next? And you want to define that as your personal brand and build that as an element of your reputation of who you are. So think about that. And if you need some help defining that, I'm going to give you 3 simple categories to think about. 1 is relationship. Anyone, at the higher and higher you go in a business, the more and more your work is tied to relationship. And having a relationship, maintaining and managing relationship, communication, all the things that are surrounded with relationship. So if you need to be thinking and what it looks like to operate at the next level and you're not sure, think first about relationship. Think second about influence. Because not only are those relationships just about communication, it's about influence. How are you effective with those people at influencing them, rallying the troops, getting people to agree and work together behind a common cause and a common goal? That influence is critical. And the third piece, I would argue, is strategy, which is not just thinking about your role, but thinking broader, thinking about the bigger company, thinking about what do we need to accomplish as an organization, and how do I and how can I contribute to that? So if you are unsure about defining what your next level of performance should look like, what your personal brand or reputation or attributes that you want to embody at the next level role, think about those 3 things. Think about relationship, influence, and strategy. Now, once you've defined what that is, the next thing is you need to do it. Act on it. It's not enough to just have these things written down and have this idea that, well, I need to be more influential at some point. No. Act on it. What does it look like to be influential? How do you actually practice that? I've got multiple podcasts talking about influence. And as a matter of fact, if you are interested in learning more about that, comment influence right now. Just put influence in the comments, and I will talk about that in my next podcast. But for now, think about how do you put these things into practice? Because your reputation is based on action. It's not just based on this idea you have in your head. You've got to do it. But that leads us to the third point, which is you also have to talk about it because people already have a reputation of you. So let's go back to this example of Brad. Brad was seen by many people as a workhorse. So if Brad started to focus more on relationship and influence and strategy, he also needed to talk about those things explicitly with people so they know what he's doing, and it gives them the opportunity to reshape their perception of him. Because if you're not talking about it, it could be years. You could go on and completely change the focus and the way you're doing your work, but people don't recognize it. And it's not their fault. Everybody's busy. They're absorbed in their own thing. They're not spending all their time studying and analyzing you. So you have to talk about it. You've got to say, this is what I'm focusing on, and draw people's attention to it. In another podcast episode, I've talked about this idea of meals and snacks. And the snacks are just these very simple ways that you can talk about the things you're working on and tie actual work product back to the themes. So if you're talking about innovation, as an example, let's just say that's one of the next level attributes that you're wanting to emphasize. You can talk about that one with someone. When you bring a new idea, they can say, oh, that's a really good idea. You say, oh, thanks. I've really been working on innovation and just bringing more of that into my work these days. It can be that simple, but you're connecting the dots for them. You're talking about it. You're helping them to see this is who you are and helping them to shape their perception of you. Okay. The hidden secret, the hidden blocker, the hidden obstacle that most people make is not being aware that they have a reputation and not understanding that they have it, what it is, and that so much of it is based on what they do today and their job today. You don't want to be anchored in your current job. You want to be anchored in your next job. So think deliberately about who you are, the reputation you want to build, the personal brand you want to build. Identify 2 or 3 attributes, act on them, and talk about them so people understand what it is that you're doing, and they can start to see it and they connect the dots. They can connect, oh, this thing you're doing and this thing that you explicitly said you're working on. Now they're going to start to understand who you are. They're going to start to associate those words with you, and you've changed things around. You're no longer expecting to have the title first so that you can act like it. Instead, you're acting like you have that next job. And when you act like you have that next job, it is inevitable that you will get it. The key, as always, is to put this into practice. You actually have to do something different. I'm going to go back to the example of Brad. He had to emphasize relationship. That meant having time on his calendar to build relationships with people, to sit down and have one-on-ones, to have a conversation, to find partnership opportunities, to deep dive and understand their business problems and how Brad could help solve them. He had to deliberately change his calendar. So this is not a concept. This is about being able to look at your week and say, I'm actually spending my time differently now as a result of this exercise. And if you're not spending your time differently, you didn't do it right. Don't make the mistake of saying how I did last week and last month and last year is how I'm going to do this week. Don't make that mistake. That's anchoring everything in today's world or the past world. You want to anchor in the future world. Where are you going? You are capable of so much more than what you're doing right now. And it simply requires you sitting down to say, what do I want to go? What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? What are the attributes or characteristics I need? And how do I bring those into my day today? And then talk about that. Share it with people so they know what you're working on. When you do those things, you should be able to see it in your calendar. You're doing something different and you're going to get a different result. Thanks for listening to Do Something Different. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment, and share with your friends. You can also find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you want additional content beyond what's on the podcast, make sure to follow me